Okay, our next speaker is Brad Urani. Brad Urani is a coder, karaoke singer. Okay, we're going to have some competition tonight, and barbecue evangelist. He believes happiness is directly correlated with the size of your Vim RC and refuses to buy into Yagni. When not hiking or hacking, he preaches the wonders of Ruby and SQL as staff engineer at ProCore in Santa Barbara, California. Brad Urani.
All right. Hello. Kamusta? Did I say that right? Yes, that's the hardest part of my talk. I nailed it. My name is Brad Urani. It is very nice to meet you all. See you all. This is my first time at RubyConf Philippines. My first time in the Philippines. We're a lovely, beautiful country here. I have only been here since yesterday, but I've already had a really fantastic time. Everyone is super, super nice here. I'm definitely coming back. So this is about command lines, the command line. It's about your shell environment. It's about the command line toolkit. It's a talk about how you can change your command line, the way it works, the hacks you can do to make it better, to improve it, to make you a more productive developer. It's kind of a fun talk. It's about adding new tools, about cool new tricks you can use. It carries kind of a serious message though too. The serious message being, if you master your command line environment, if you master your shell, and if you're confident with your shell, it can help you get more confident in doing ops, feel more comfortable when you SSH into servers, perhaps take your careers in new, different places. I flew out here yesterday from Los Angeles. It was kind of an adventurous flight. I had a 16-hour flight. My MacBook, the battery lasts about 8 hours, right? And I had about 6 hours of work to do. That's great. Philippine Airlines is kind of interesting, though. You pay for Wi-Fi, and they give you 150 megabytes. And when you exhaust your quota, you're done, and you don't get it anymore. Suffice to say, every time it seems like I think you load Google Maps, it uses about 15 megabytes, right? So this is not very much. I at one point typed npm install and almost hit go, and I realized that was like 100 megabytes right there. Any guess how long this lasted me on the flight? About an hour and a half, right? And it cost quite a bit too. It's the most expensive internet I've ever bought on the way over here. So yeah, my battery outlasted my internet. But I work at ProCore in Santa Barbara, California. We are big supporters of the Rails community and the Ruby community. We're the Diamonds. Is anyone going to Pittsburgh this year? Yeah, we're going to send about 30 people. We're the Diamond sponsors again. We were the Diamond sponsors last year. We love the Rails community. We love to support the Rails community. ProCore makes software for the construction industry. This kind of looks like Manila. It's not, but it looks like Manila. There's a lot of construction going around here. Good chance some of these skyscrapers going up around you are using our software to build them. Here's an example of it's hard to see that, but this is our iPad app, right, which shows blueprints, plans. We've got this full suite of construction management software. Here's a man in the field using it, and it is a man. Construction industry, like the software industry, is dominated by males. There are very few females, but we're trying to help that. We've got a Women in Construction program. We modeled it after a lot of the Ruby, kind of women in tech programs, right? Trying to increase gender diversity in this area, and it's something we're proud to do, and something we're very happy about. And we're a Ruby shop, right? Our Rails code base is huge. It's over 1 million lines of code. It started in 2005 on Rails 0.95. We have a lot of back-end engineers. Probably as many people there are in this room. We have probably that many Rails engineers just working on one single Rails application. That does not include the front-end devs, the mobile devs, the DevOps, security, and all that. I'm talking about just back-end Rails. Probably as many people just in this room on one app. We deploy it 5 times a day. So we're doing Ruby and Rails at massive scale, and we like to invest in people's toolings. That's what this talk is about. It's about tooling. It's about getting shell. We like about using your shell. We like to teach people this kind of things because it makes them happier, more productive developers. We also have a lot of this kind of stuff, right? These are various ops tools and infrastructure management tools, and I'm not very good at these kind of things. But hacking my shell is kind of what made me confident playing around with these a little more. The reason I'm not very good at these things is because I started my life as a .NET developer, right? This is me in 2013 saying, I do .NET, I want Windows, what's this command line thing? And here's me today, command line everything, right? By the way, if any of you do a lot of dev evangelism or social media, you will find that you never want to change your profile pic. That's why I look exactly the same in 2018 as I did in 2013, right? So this is me. What changed? Why all of a sudden do I feel so confident with my command line? So much so that I'm still not good at this stuff, but I even start thinking, you know what? These kind of things, I can do this. I'm usually an app developer. My background is web engineering and data engineering. But I've started to feel comfortable using this kind of stuff too. What changed? And what changed is that I started hacking my dot files. So dot files, right? This is how you change your shell. This is how you change your command line applications and change their behaviors and modify your shell environment. What I mean by dot files are just a bunch of files in your home directory that start with a dot, right? So if you cd with a little tilde, that's your home directory. And if you put little files in there that start with a dot, they start to change the behavior of your shell, of the various programs you use, and the whole way you interact with your dev machine, the way you interact with your computer. And what's nice is not only can you hack these files, change these files, and give yourself a better development environment, you can also, once you learn how to do that, it helps you do fun things like that on the server as well. And I'm going to warn you, if you start hacking your dot files, at some point, you are going to break everything, right? You are going to totally destroy your environment. And guess what? It's probably going to happen at work at the most inconvenient time. And guess what? You will feel embarrassed, right? Because you'll probably be pair programming, and all of a sudden your GetPrompt isn't going to work, and something's going to be broken, and someone's going to just be like, what are you doing? Why is your shell environment broken? But here's the good news. You will fix it. You will fix it because you have to. And in fixing it, you will understand a little bit more about your shell, a little bit more of your environment. You'll become a little bit more confident as a developer and pick up some new skills along the way. Nothing teaches you like necessity. Nothing will help you fix your shell better than having a broken one at a time when you need it the most. Warning, also, this gets addictive. This is me 2 years ago at Christmas. I started hacking my dot files, and I, at the same time, decided I wanted to develop on Vim. Do we have any Vim users here? I did all this at the same time, and I spent an entire Christmas vacation sleeping on my couch in my in-laws, hacking my dot files. I missed Christmas dinner, didn't open presents, just because I was like, gotta make the perfect Vim setup, must make the perfect TeamOps setup. It gets addictive, and you will miss important events in your life if you get addicted to this kind of thing, right? So warning, massive time waste alert is coming. Well, let's start here with shells, right? We all use a shell, aka a command line, right? Looks like this. You have a choice in shells, believe it or not. Some people don't know that. But if you use macOS, if you use Linux, the default shell is Bash. Bash is boring. This is the boring shell. That's Larry. I call him Larry. I don't know why. That's the boring shell. It's utilitarian. It works. It's got some nice features built in, but it's not great. Turns out we could do better. ZShell, right, is a nicer shell. It's a little slicker. It's got better command line completion and stuff. I'm going to demo it for you in a second. This is an improvement, right? And we can choose to switch out the shell on our machines, on our dev machines, on our production servers if we want, right? These I don't really have much experience with. These are shells from the 90s where they really went kind of crazy and did funky things with built-in menus and kind of fun stuff. I don't use them. They're kind of, I don't know many people who do. But if you really want to get crazy with the shell game, you can try these out, right? By the way, just a quick terminology, by the way, that if you're in macOS, the program you use to access your shell is a terminal, for instance, terminal or iTerm, right? Shell is the program that runs inside, right? Just to be clear on some terminology. I use ZShell, right? I use ZShell because it's a little bit better than Bash. It's got some niceties. ZShell, also known as Zish to the community. Most people just call it Zish, right? What does this give you that you can't do in Bash? One of the nice things is very nice, colorful ways to autocomplete, right? It's got just a slightly better experience. It's got more colors, right? Bash kind of does these things, but it's just slightly improved, right? We can start just doing path completion, right? Which is just a little bit better. Oh, we can start just doing a little bit slightly better path completion, right? We get nicer output. Just a general improvement. Sometimes small things matters, right? It's small changes, but they're significant changes. So sometimes little niceties and little nice things, right, make for just a nicer experience, which is why I use ZShell instead of Bash. Switching, by the way, is easy. If you want to switch out your shell, right, you run this little command. macOS works on Linux. The next time you fire up your terminal, your shell will be ZShell, right? It's that easy to switch. So these shells, they have built-in programming languages, right? So hopefully if you're all Ruby developers, you've used IRB, right? What is IRB? You type in Ruby, and it's a REPL, right? You type in Ruby, and it runs the command. A shell is just a REPL that runs a shell scripting language. If you're using bash, the language is called bash. If you're using ZShell, the language is called ZSh, right? It's just a REPL just like IRB is, it's just a different programming language. So here I've made a little loop in ZShell, and to be honest, here's the unfortunate part, is these languages, I'm just going to be honest, they suck. Has anyone written a lot of bash or whatever? It's not good. They're these horrible old antiquated languages. The scoping rules are weird. There are all kinds of foot guns. I know it's unfashionable to say bad things about a programming language. Let's just be honest, they suck. But knowing a little bit is important, right? These days, because Ruby and Python is installed on just about every server, you can write your scripts in Ruby and Python are much nicer. But if you start hacking your dot files, you will write a little bit of bash or a little bit of ZSh, right? And you'll learn about just how to do a conditional. Just how to write an if in bash. And those are useful things, right? Those are useful things that you may employ someday. So it's expanding your scope of the kind of things you know. And by the way, ZSh and bash, the programming languages, are almost the same. They're almost identical. There's a few things that ZSh adds. I don't use the thing it adds, and they're more or less the same language. In fact, if I'm going to put a script in a file, I put the shebang at the top so it runs in bash, even though my shell is ZSh. And like I said, they're very similar. This way it's more portable, right? But these are the kind of things, right? One of the reasons I like hacking dot files is because you start to get used to these kind of tools, right? It comes in useful later. So what can we do in ZSh, right, to make our lives a little better? The first thing is we can add shell aliases. So right here, I have made an alias, be equals bundle exec. Ta-da! This is so easy, wow. That allows us to just do something like this, right? be Rails console instead of bug. I'm not going to run that because it takes forever because our code base is a million lines of code. But bundle exec, bundle install, right? And now this is I just saved you a bunch of typing, right? Little niceties, little things you make lives easier. That's all it did is now you can type be instead of bundle exec. Nice. We can expand that idea and we can make this one bears, bundle exec, Rails S. Wow, that's 14, 15, 16 characters, and I got it down to 4. I just quadrupled your productivity. Give yourselves a pat on the back. You're more productive developers. You all deserve raises now, just with a little shell alias, What else is right? We can add functions to our shell. So here I make a function. It's just called mcd. All it does is helps me make directories. So we all know the command makedir, right? This one uses makedir-p, which says either make this, or if it already exists, don't do anything, and it cds into that directory. So I can just go down here, right? I can just say mcd foo, and it makes it, and I'm already in the foo directory, right? Just a nice little shortcut, nothing major, but I'm slightly more efficient, right? I'm starting to hack my shell, customize it to my sort of development style, the things I like to do. Okay, here's one that I think is a little more valuable, right? This is just a function called g. That all it is, and there's a conditional, it says, if you pass an argument, pass it to get, otherwise run get status. So it looks like this. No argument is get status, right? With an argument, it passes to get. There's gdiff, there's nothing in here, but right? And all of a sudden, instead of typing get every time, I can just use the command G and have really easy get status, right? One tiny little trick that makes you just a little bit more productive. Very cool. Okay. Here's one that I did not write. I took this from someone else's dot files. By the way, this is a common theme, is people of us who get into this, we borrow stuff from each other's dot files. This is making a function called man. Now, wait a minute, we already have a function called man, right? Man makes the man pages. What this is doing is overwriting the man function that ships with Linux, doing some term cap stuff. I don't even know what that is. It's something to do with terminal color codes. I'm not even sure how it works. But then it calls man itself, right? And just by dropping this in my ZShrc, right, I get colored man pages. Ah, nice. Isn't that slick, right? Okay, cool. By the way, something I want to mention, right, is where do these functions go? Where do these aliases go? There's a file called ZShrc, or if you run bash, right, it's bashrc. And you copy those commands to add aliases. You put those functions in that file, right, in your dot files, in the home/.zshrc file. That way, every time you open up a new shell, it loads those into your shell, and you have this stuff at your fingertips ready to go. What else can we do? Ooh, look at this boring old prompt, right? That's pretty useless, isn't it? We can go haywire with this one, right? By default, we get the default. What if it showed our get branch, right? Even better if it tracked our staged and unstaged commits were super genius, right? What if it showed the diff with the origin servers, right? You may have already noticed mine, but Mine looks like this. What is this? Number one, we've got the current directory. Ooh, super useful. We've got our current Git branch. We have the number of commits behind origin master. So I know that my coworkers have pushed 192 commits up to this repo that I have not pulled yet. And I have committed once and have not pushed it yet, right? This is the commits ahead of origin master. Here I have one stage change, right? And I have one unstaged change in this repo. That's a nice, useful command prompt. Pretty cool, right? How did I do this? I spent weeks creating this. No, I'm just kidding. I used someone else's, right? There's this great repo. It's called ZShell and there's some installation instructions. By the way, there's also a port called bash ZShell, so if you want to use bash, there's a port. You kind of install this, you put a line in your ZShrc or your bashrc, right, and you get this like really awesome prompt. And it's smart too, by the way. Knowing what's on origin requires network calls, right? It kind of does that in the background, and there's a timeout, so if you're not connected, you know, it will like not freeze your shell while it tries to contact GitHub. It's a very well done script. So here's, but we can also install like tools in our command line, right? And this is one of my favorites. It's a program called FZF, and here's the GitHub page. I installed this in my shell, and this one is better demonstrated. So here I am in a code repo, right? FZF does some really neat things, like I can Control T, and I can start searching for files. Ooh, pretty slick, right? And I can tab and open 3 of them at once. Right? Well, that doesn't open them, but I can also search my history, right? And see what I typed. All from this cool little fuzzy search command. This also works like most good Unix tools. It is also a, I have to be careful when I cat to the screen. Aren't you recording this? Yeah, you're recording this. We also want to, you can also pipe this into a fuzzy search, and then you can start searching based on, and you can identify lines of code, right? If you are a Vim user, it contains Vim plugins, right? To allow you to search for files just like that. So it's like this kind of multi-purpose fuzzy search tool that works as a command line tool, as a shell function, as a Vim plugin. Super useful stuff that just makes your day nicer. I can search my key mappings in Vim, right? I can search the open, I don't think I have any open buffers, but I can search my open buffers. It's just sort of this really nice all-around fuzzy search tool for many different platforms, and I love it. But that's not all. Well, on the subject of Vim, right? This is not a Vim talk. Obviously, when we talk about dot files, people who are Vim users, the granddaddy of all dot files is your vimrc. I didn't want to make this a Vim talk because I know some of you are not Vim users, and I could give 2 or 3 talks just on Vim. Maybe I will. Maybe next time. But to Vim or not to Vim, right? This is the question, because Vim is a massive commitment in time. And it goes through like sort of 3 stages if you decide to learn Vim. The number one is suffering, right? You try to learn Vim and you just botch all the commands and you don't know how to exit, and it's just like really hard to do. It is really, really screwy. But you start getting used to it, right? And the next is Stockholm Syndrome. This is what's called when you are a captive, when someone has taken you hostage and you spend so much time with your captors that you start to identify them and you start to relate with them, forgetting that they're actually really bad people, right, who are making your lives bad. Once you get past Stockholm Syndrome and you're good at Vim, the final stage is the sunk cost fallacy, right? This is when someone says, hey, should I switch to Vim? And you say, yeah, it's great, completely forgetting all the time you sunk, right? It's like children. The only reason humans have children, a second child, if you've had one, the only reason you have another is because you forgot how hard it was the first time. That's like Vim, right? It's the sunk cost fallacy. So these are the stages of Vim. Whether or not you want to do that for your dev environment, it's up to you. You will waste a tremendous amount of time, but you'll feel pretty cool at the end. But importantly, right, Vim on the laptop does lead to Vim on the server. And this does give you kind of an extra capability. If you ever have to SSH into some environment, you know, and then modify an EMV file or something like that, knowing this, being confident with this, being able to, on a production server, open a file, modify it, and save it without botching that, right, and most importantly, exit, right, is kind of a lifesaver, sometimes a valuable skill. And it pops up in some weird places, too, right? For one thing, Vim key commands, Vim shortcuts pop up in other tools. Have you ever used less? You know about less, the little paging thing? Did you know you can hit slash and start searching just like you can? It uses the same search command as Vim does. Control U, control down, same as Vim, scroll up and down. So less uses Vim shortcuts, TeamOps uses Vim shortcuts. This is pSQL right here. In pSQL, you can do a \E, open up Vim, companies, WQ, forgot the semicolon, right? And run a SQL query, right? So you can use Vim as your query editor in pSQL, which is nice. So if you know Vim, it extends to more than just dev. It extends to servers. It extends to other tools like less and pSQL and other things that either use Vim itself or Vim shortcuts, which is pretty nice. Speaking of pSQL, right? Did anyone notice my prompt? Does that look different from your prompt in pSQL, right? That is because you can control the pSQL with a dot file. Nice. Here's what mine looks like. This is in a file called .psql in my home directory. Sorry, that's so small. But among the cool things in here are this line. It says pset null, right? This just changes the way null looks in the query output. See how that looks now, null with the brackets? That's a little nicer than just like the blank line that's like normally there. So you can use a dot file to change pSQL. These lines here change the pSQL prompt. So you can see mine, I have a local environment to remember that I'm local, and I've got my name, and I've got the database that I'm attached to, which is a better prompt than ships with pSQL. By the way, if you are in charge of your production servers and you have people using pSQL on production databases, change the prompt and make it red in capital letters that says production database, right? And save your users from accidentally mistaking a production database from your local database, and Sam says don't accidentally drop it, right? So yes, do that, right? So now your dot files are not just useful on your dev machines, they're useful on the server as well. Okay, oh, and you can add a /timing in here, which turns on timing mode by default. Now every time you run a query, it shows the time it took to execute in milliseconds right there. Nice, cool. We're making our lives easier. We've hacked pSQL using a dot file. Nice. Okay. Now let's talk about Get. Hopefully we all use this. Is anyone besides the Ruby core team members here on Get? Right? Okay. That's what I thought. Most of the world uses Get. There's a file that you could put. It's called .getconfig in your home directory, and you put some stuff in there, right? And you can change colors, you can change commands, you can make aliases, and do all kinds of things to make your Vim workflow like super, super smooth, super more useful. Here's one, an alias that's in my .getconfig, which is just dfom. All it does is diff the origin master in color. So I can exit out of here, and I can just do G, remember, because of my awesome G function, dfom, and I can see immediately the diff between where I'm at and origin master with typing only 4 characters. Pretty cool. My life's getting easier. Where is my slideshow? Oh, here it is. Here's another one. This is like a bunch of like crazy, does a bunch of pretty formatting and a bunch of color changing and stuff, which gives me a get alias, which is just called LG. And this just looks like this. I now have a graphical representation. I'm going to actually shrink that. You can see it better. I now have a graphical representation, right, of Git commits right there in my shell. Pretty nice. We like this. Very cool. So a nicely cultivated Git config, right, makes just for a slicker workflow, and you can start to like sort of tailor your own workflow. Does anyone use git add prompt? Right? Git add prompt is really cool. I just make it git AP, and I use that more than I use git add. So anyway, Git also has some other like functionality, some other things you can add with your dot files. So this is a typical Git directory, right? And there's a folder in there called hooks. Has anyone used hooks before? So hooks, right, allows you to drop a script in that folder, and you can, like, for instance, run a script pre-commit, pre-push, pre-poll, pre-fetch. Here's my favorite. Don't even try to bother reading the code, right? But this is a pre-push hook. So I drop this into Git, into the Git folder. I symlink it to my home directory. I'll explain all that in a second, how to install these things and how to manage them in a second. But this is a pre-push script. And this is a script specifically designed to tailor me from embarrassment. Has anyone accidentally ever pushed a master? This is what mine does now, because of that script. Ta-da! Right? You're about to push master. Is that what you intended? I just saved myself a hell of a lot of embarrassment with a very nice GitHub file. Cool. All right. What else? All right, let's talk about Ruby, because Ruby is fundamentally a command line tool, and I think that it was born out of a command line environment. Because Ruby started life as a scripting language, not as what most of it know it as, which is a web application development language. It has deep roots in command line, it has wonderful command line tools, and it's configurable by the command line. So a few simple things you can do just with Ruby. There are 3 files here that change the behavior of some of your basic Ruby tools, like gem, rspec, and Rails. So in my .gemrc file, I just have gem, no document. Now every time you bundle install and you load a gem, it's not going to waste time downloading all the documentation for the gem. Cool, this would have really helped me on my airplane flight, right? When I'm trying to save bandwidth, actually. I probably saved myself an extra half an hour just with this line of time on the flight over here. The rspec RC, right, allows us to do things like color. You can tell Sam Phippen wrote that because it's the British spelling, right? Yeah, okay, they both work. We don't put a U in it in America. So just say that with when you see that, just say it with a Sam accent. Color, right? And then we have this -- order random. What that does is it makes it so it runs your specs in random order, which you want. It ensures that you don't have any side effects that are affecting your tests the way they run. So cool. We've improved rspec just by putting this .dot file in our home directory. Here's one. Actually, that's a typo. This is not .rspec. This is .rails rc. In Rails RC, right, I just have it so that if I create a new Rails app, I get the Postgres database by default. I skip test unit, right, because I use rspec instead, and I skip turbolinks because turbolinks is weird. It works, but it's weird. Anyway, so now every time I create a new Rails app, I get some same defaults to things I like. Cool. But the coolest part about using Ruby is hacking your pry.rc. Does anyone know about this file? Pry.rc is cool. This is, I think, the most fun. So pry, if you don't know, is a Ruby shell. It's a shell that has, it's basically an IRB replacement, and also it's a debugger for Ruby. And you can make it better. For instance, if you drop a file called .pry.rc in your home directory, you can assign shortcuts, right, to common things. So if you use a debugger like pry bybug, right, instead of, does anyone get sick of typing continue, step, next? Right, and typing all that, now it's just CC, SS, and when I want to leave, right, I can EE and just exit. Saves myself lots of times just with some pry keyboard shortcuts for better debugging, right? We can also install gems using our pry.rc. So here, assuming I have the gem awesome print installed for this Ruby version, it will hook awesome print into your pry. And that is pretty nice. Let me see, how am I going to demo this? And then when you do something like puts an array, right? You just get, actually I think that's the default. I'm not going to try to tempt the demo gods right now, but trust me, you get awesome, cooler looking output, right? You get color output, it splits your hashes and arrays onto more than one line because it uses awesome print to print out things that you print in pry instead of just a standard like Ruby puts. More colors, better looking stuff. It's really, really cool. Here's another one. Have you ever wished your factory girl models were available in your pry session? That's cool, right? We set up all of these factory girl stuff just for rspec, to create all these configurable different things that we want to insert in the database. But sometimes we want to access that in pry. Here you can, right? By requiring factory girl and including a couple modules and things like that, you can just take advantage of all these factory girl models for your interactive debugging session, which is a pretty big boon to your workflow. That's pretty nice. And there are a few other things, for instance, this one is adding a command called SQL, which allows you to just use Active Record to send raw SQL strings to your database, right? So you don't have to exit and go to pSQL. So if you're in pry and you're in a Rails app, right, like in Rails console, and you want to just do raw SQL, you can do it right from pry without having to leave pry. So it's another little nicety that you can just add to pry.rc and make better. How much time do I have here? So TeamOps, right? Does anyone use TeamOps? TeamOps is it's a terminal. It's a terminal multiplexer, is what it is, and it looks like this. You type TeamOps, And all of a sudden, right, I'm in my shell, but I've got this like green bar at the bottom, see? I've kind of tricked that out. I've got date time and like regular time. I've got date time and UTC. There's some other stuff that you can't see. But what TeamOps does is it allows us to like split and do multiple panes, for instance. So typically my workflow is to have like Vim over here, right? And when I run my unit tests, it actually spits them out to another pane. So TeamOps is this kind of multiplexer that runs on your shell that allows to split and do things. Now most terminals do that too. Like I'm not going to try to show it, but like iTerm will do that. But I'll tell you what, there's a big advantage to using TeamOps, which is actually a shell-based tool over, like for instance, the split pane stuff in iTerm, which is a terminal-based tool, because you can run TeamOps on the server. And this gives you something really, really cool. Something that I find absolutely invaluable. So for instance, I am going to SSH into a server right now. Here it goes, conference Wi-Fi, don't fail me now, yes, right? So I'm going to do some work. I'm on a server. Let's say I need to run like a long-running data migration job in my Rails console, right? Or let's say I'm like deep in SQL land and I'm trying to diagnose SQL problems. So maybe I have, I'm going to load up TeamOps. Maybe I've got I've got like a pSQL session over here or something like that, right? Or I'm doing something in this pane. And then like maybe over here I've got like Vim open, you know, and I'm like hacking away at something. Well, has anyone ever lost a SSH session like during the middle of kind of the, has anyone lost internet connectivity? Did you know that if you have Rails console open and you are like running something in Rails console and it's processing data and you lose your SSH session, that will kill that process and your data will not continue to run well? Well, watch this, I'm really tempting the demo gods. Closed it, right? We just lost our session. Did we? I don't know. Turns out, if you do TeamOps, your session sticks around and you can reattach to it. So, TeamOps LS shows that there is an active session running. 0, and then back. And it's still there. Whew. That was the good sketchy part. The Wi-Fi worked. Thank you. Okay, I got through that. But like, that's really, really cool, right? Because this is a tool where I use this in my development environment. You know, when I'm deving like in Vim or whatever, and it's a tool I use every day on my laptop that all of a sudden gives me superpowers on the server. You know, so here's like just by modifying my development environment, I'm becoming a more useful developer on the server environment. How much time do I have? Oh, I've got okay. It's just an example of a command line tool that I use locally, helping me, giving me server powers, being that like first step into ops land, making me feel more comfortable. Like if I want to start messing around with Docker on servers, now I've got more tools to make it safer, to make me more confident doing those kind of things. It's a gateway drug, right? Like dot files are a gateway drug to ops, right? Because it gives you confidence to experiment and screw around. So anyway. GitHub, right? So we've made all these dot files. Now, we put all these work into these files. We've hacked our shell. We've modified TeamOps. We've modified Git. We've modified Vim. We've modified, we've got this custom setup with that runs Git and does all these cool things. We've got all these shell aliases. We need to manage this somehow, don't we? What's cool is what you do is you put these in GitHub, right? And if you want to show them off to the world, you make it public, right? So here's my dot files repo. It is on GitHub. If you click around in here, what you'll find is that there are my dot files, and what you do is you clone this project onto your local computer, right, to wherever you put your source code. Then what you do is you run a script that symlinks the dot files from your source code repo into your home directory. Now, since my dot files are in GitHub, I can install them on any computer I want, right? So maybe I run out of batteries and I want to borrow someone's computer and I want to use my Vim setup. All I do is clone my dot files repo, run a script that symlinks it into your home dir, and all of a sudden you have your entire dev setup right there in that computer. Maybe you want to install them on a server, right? And what's kind of cool is in this way you share them with the world. And this way it becomes like this kind of online swap meet of like people sharing each other's dot files. I find famous Rubyists or like, you know, celebrity programmers or people who do Docker and Go, and I check out their dot files, and I borrow things and I put their shortcuts into mine. And you find some cool things, but what you need is a script that symlinks the files from your dot files repo into your home directory. And you've got a few choices here. So there's a tool I like to use, it's called RCM. It's by the fine folks at Thoughtbot, right? And you just do like brew install RCM, And then you'd like put one little config file, and then you do like RCM up, right? And it symlinks all your files over. There's also an app. It's also an app, so you can apt-get RCM, right? It's just a nice little program that you can install on most computers that does the symlinking for you. Alternatively, you can borrow a script from someone, right? I was poking around some of the other speakers' dot files. Like I looked at Megan 2's the other day, and here's Megan's dot files, and she uses this thing down here, homesick. I was like, what is homesick, right? Turns out homesick is a Ruby gem that allows you to symlink things into your home directory. It's a Ruby gem to allow you to manage your home directory. Really cool. Or you could write your own. Half the fun of this is that you get kick-ass cool dev environment stuff, but the other half is part of the fun is doing it yourself, right? So maybe before you download something really cool like RCM that's fully featured, you might try to write your own first, see how you like it just for the experience. There's fun in the result of this, which is cooler shell. There's also fun in the hacking, do it yourself, and the learning along the way, right? Here's just like a little example of how you could do it in Bash. I got this from Jessie Fazell's dot files. She's a kind of a famous Go programmer, and I was picking through her dot files, and she's got a make file. It's just a little Bash that does the symlinking for you. Cool. I checked out Sam Fitman's dot files, just for fun, to see just what Sam had. This is kind of a cool technique, though. You can see what he did is he forked someone else's. So if you want a set of dot files, and you don't necessarily want to just start your own, you can fork someone's who's already got great dot files and start modifying them, right? Sam has some legendary commit messages. I like these. New Mac, do this. Or, don't judge me, right? Or my favorite, fuck it, restart it. Right? But you pick around and you find some cool stuff in here. Like I found this in Sam's dot files. This is from his PryRC. So what this does is, notice this class object. So this is monkey patching object, isn't it, in your pry session. I tried this out. I put this in my dot files. I checked it out. And it turns out it does something pretty cool. If you have a class name, you can do object.ry, and you can get the docs for that function, or that class in this case, right? Or it works for a function. So here's .ry, and I'll do it on 2s. Oh, hold on, let me make that bigger. So .ry on 2s, and now I have the docs for the toStream method right there in my shell. So cool, I just picked through someone's dot files and something to help my workflow. How am I doing? Oh gosh, I'm like over, way over. So to fork or not fork, that's what you choose. There are lots of files, repos, and different things that you can find and install and pick on your own. Wait, when do I stop? Oh, okay.
Just grab your phone.
Oh, okay. Wait, I started at 10:45, so I have till 11:30. Yeah, okay, I'll keep going. Sorry. Oh, I have 30 minutes. Crap. Okay. So wrapping this up, right? There are lots of repos online. There's awesome dot files. You can check that out, and it gives you links to other people's dot files, the tools you can use for dot files. I forked the ThoughtBot dot files. These are really rich, really complex. If this is where you start, you might be a little overwhelmed. But if you get pretty advanced with this stuff, check out the ThoughtBot dot files. This is what I forked. You can notice my dot files are a fork of ThoughtBots. Don't check in secret stuff, by the way. Make sure you're not checking in keys or passwords or stuff like that, right? Be careful. Go experiment. That's the point of this. You get better on command line environment, but also the journey along the way is what's fun, right? You learn shell, you learn bash, you learn to hack your environment, you learn to fix broken shells and broken things like that, and those are skills that follow you throughout with your career. So go experiment. Here's some resources. I'm Brad Urani. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad.